The sky cracked. Not in some poetic, metaphysical way. Number, it literally cracked, like a mirror hit with a brick. The clouds split open in jagged lines, and then came the lights. Flickering, unnatural lights. Blues and reds that danced like sirens but screamed something far worse. They weren't from here. The news was still calling it a phenomenon when the first wave landed. Sleek ships, shimmering armor, eyes like glass, empty, cold, and watching. And behind them, that damned flag, 6 interlocked rings, the Galactic Council, self-righteous, untouchable, and now orbiting our home like they owned it. I was working a late shift at the steel mill on the edge of Detroit when it all hit the fan. Names Connor Maddox, ex-Marine, dishonorably discharged, too angry to stay in, too useful to throw away. I'd been crawling through life since Afghanistan spit me back out, until the sky told me I wasn't done fighting yet. I got the call 2 hours after the lights hit. Not from the government, not from any surviving military base. Number it was Frankie, my old squad mate. Said one word through the static, just one. "They're here." My hands were already shaking before I even hung up, not from fear, from purpose, that itch in the back of my skull I thought I buried with my discharge papers. We knew this day would come. Hell, we used to joke about it, that if aliens ever came, the rest of the world would panic. But Americans, especially the broken, mean sons of bitches like me and Frankie, we just grab our rifles and start clearing house. I drove. Fast. Past burning buildings, through blackouts and radio silence. The cities were collapsing. Our brilliant government had no plan, no warning, no answer. And the council, they were laughing at us, broadcasting it, a message on loop in every language. This is not war. This is compliance. Your kind will be integrated. Resistance will be extinguished. They thought we were soft. They thought Earth had gone weak. Too divided, too distracted, too poisoned by its own comfort to ever push back. But they didn't know men like us were still out here. Men who'd lost everything except the will to fight. I found Frankie in a bunker 3 miles outside Ann Arbor. He wasn't alone. There were others, old vets, washed-up contractors, a few hillbilly boys with enough firepower to start a civil war, all packed into a garage filled with ammo crates and bitter grins. "We ready?" I asked, stepping through the door. Frankie grinned. He was missing 2 teeth now. "We've been ready since Fallujah." They didn't invade a planet. They invaded a pressure cooker, one filled with broken soldiers, backwoods survivalists, gangbangers, and factory rats who'd had enough. No rules, no orders, just payback. We didn't care about saving the world, not at first. It wasn't about flags or unity or any of that bull they preach at parades. This was personal. We weren't heroes. We were the last mistake they'd ever make. We didn't have tanks. We didn't have air support or satellites or shiny toys made by defense contractors with 6-figure paychecks and 0 battlefield scars. What we had was anger, old grudges, and just enough leftover gear to make the aliens bleed. The Council's first wave hit the major cities. Predictable. New York, LA, Beijing, London. Clean sweeps meant to break the spirit. Knock out the tech, neutralize leadership, take over the comms. They didn't even bother hitting the rural zones. A mistake, a big one. That's where we were, hidden in the woods, the rusted neighborhoods, the old forgotten highways of Middle America, places so stubborn even time gave up trying to modernize them. And while the cities screamed, we were loading ammo, wiring traps, tuning shortwave radios and cracking old military codes like it was 2005 again. Frankie pulled out a duffel bag that stunk like diesel and gun oil. He unzipped it like a priest opening a coffin, and inside was the beautiful bastard that started it all. An old M249 SAW he'd managed to lose during his last deployment. "Bet they don't teach this in the Galactic Academy," he muttered, slamming the belt in. Next to him, Ray, former prison guard, part-time arms dealer, was wrapping chains around a junkyard engine rigged to drop when a tripwire snapped. Crude? Sure, but the kind of crude that shreds power armor if dropped from the right height. The Council didn't understand human warfare. They expected neat engagements, rules, protocol. What they got instead was a guerrilla nightmare of bear traps, IEDs, tripwires, and ex-soldiers who'd been dreaming of another fight since the world forgot them. We called ourselves Echo Red. Not a militia, not a rebellion, just an echo. Of everything they tried to silence, every man left behind, every broken thing in this country they thought was useless. We didn't wave flags or scream about freedom. That kind of talk got people killed. We just did the job. The Council sent drones next. Silver discs, quiet and smooth, moving like ghosts across tree lines. They didn't expect some redneck in a deer blind to knock 3 out of the sky with a 30-year-old Remington. Then came the infantry. The grunts wore armor that looked expensive, smooth chrome plates that shimmered in sunlight and absorbed small-caliber rounds like they were spitballs. They marched in formation, used wrist-mounted translators to give us one chance to surrender. They didn't even lift their weapons. "Comply, Terran. Resisting is illogical. You are under Council stewardship." I shot the one doing the talking, right through the helmet. Didn't kill him. But it sure as hell scrambled whatever AI was running his translator, because his next words came out like a blender full of glass and metal. By then, we were already moving. Firing from tree lines, Molotovs from the rooftops. Frankie and Ray with suppressing fire, while Jenkins, yeah, we had a Jenkins, flanked from the creek bed with a sawed-off and a machete. It wasn't a clean fight. It was a massacre, but not the kind they expected. We lost 3 men that day. Bo, who tripped a proximity mine, Randy, who bled out trying to pull him back, and Howie, the quiet mechanic who never spoke a word but somehow always had a cigarette. Got hit in the neck, clean and fast. I remember Ray kneeling over him, lighting one last smoke and putting it between Howie's lips, even as he lay there dying. "You're good now, brother," he said. "You're out of this mess." We buried them behind the mill. No names, no crosses, just stones. That night we listened to the Council's broadcasts. Their voices had changed, less polished, less confident. They were stunned. These weren't criminals or terrorists fighting them. No ideology, no manifesto, just humans. Ordinary ones, not laying down. One of their intercepted messages said something about unexpected resistance vectors and civilian combat anomalies. In their world, if you didn't wear a uniform, you weren't a soldier. That was their mistake. The next few weeks blurred together. Ambushes, evacs, old roads filled with burned-out cars and drones hanging overhead like metal vultures. The Council thought Earth would be pacified in a week. But every town they took, 5 others went dark. Not because they fled, but because they fought in the shadows. Old vets from Vietnam came out of retirement. Bikers, ex-cops, gang leaders, failed boxers, high school dropouts, didn't matter. If you had a reason to hate what the world had become, you picked up a gun. Echo Red linked up with Echo North near Wisconsin. We shared supplies and traded bodies. No loyalty, no tears. If you could fight, you were in. If you couldn't, you patched wounds or fixed radios. I remember sitting at the edge of a cold field, cleaning my rifle and watching the moon rise. There was no beauty in it anymore, no wonder. Just a silent witness to the oldest thing in the universe. Men who won't die quietly. Then came the Council's retaliation. They burned Grand Rapids to the ground. Orbit to surface missiles. Civilians still inside. Just to send a message. Compliance or erasure. We didn't break. We didn't negotiate. We broadcast the screams of their soldiers as we tore them apart in the ruins of their victory. That's when they sent the enforcers. Not soldiers, monsters, 8 feet tall, covered in armor that looked more grown than built. No eyes, just sensors. No voices, just hissing, like snakes had learned to speak in rage. Each one could crush a man's skull with a single swing. We lost half a unit taking down one. Ray was one of them. He'd rigged himself with C4 and duct tape. Walked straight into a squad of enforcers while we distracted them with gunfire. He didn't scream, didn't monologue, just smiled and flicked the detonator. We found pieces of enforcer armor 6 blocks away. Found pieces of Ray even farther. I didn't cry. Couldn't. Not because I was too strong, but because I'd forgotten how. I remember one council officer, tall, slender, with skin like marble and a voice like a lullaby. They captured him during a failed sweep in Kentucky. We had him tied to a chair in an old church. He didn't beg, didn't threaten, just looked at us and said, "You are anomalies, aberrations. You were supposed to fade, to die with your empire. What fuels this resistance?" Frankie leaned down, blood still on his boots, and whispered, "We're the ghosts of your arrogance." And then we shot him. That wasn't war, that was a message. They wanted compliance. We gave them corpses. The council didn't understand what they woke up. They thought they'd landed on a soft planet. But they didn't land on Earth. They landed on Detroit. They landed on Mississippi, on backwoods Tennessee, on Philly, on South Chicago, on places that chewed up their own people and spit them out meaner. They landed in the middle of fathers who'd lost custody, brothers who'd lost brothers, men who spent their whole lives feeling disposable, and now had a reason to fight again. They didn't land on humanity. They landed on rage. And rage doesn't surrender. There comes a point when you stop counting days, when every sunrise looks like the last, and every hour bleeds into the next with the stench of blood, ash, and burned plastic. That's where we were now. Somewhere past survival, way past strategy. This was war without borders, without uniforms, without laws, and it was working. The Council's grip on Earth had started to crack. They underestimated something no advanced species could fully comprehend: how spiteful, stubborn, and savage humans get when cornered. After Ray blew himself to hell, morale hit rock bottom. Frankie took it personal. He didn't say much for a while, just started carving hash marks into his forearm with a knife. Not to keep track of kills, to keep track of losses. Said he wanted to remember each one. Said if we ever won this damn thing, he'd tattoo their names into his bones if he had to. Me? I coped differently. I stopped sleeping. Sleep brought dreams, and dreams brought faces. The ones we buried, the ones we couldn't. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, reaching for my sidearm like I was still in Kandahar. Only now the shadows weren't Taliban. They were something worse, something smarter, something watching. The Council's new tech was learning. Their drones started flying lower, scanning heat signatures from 3 miles out. They'd adapted our weapons, too. Started deploying anti-ballistic shockwaves, short bursts that turned bullets into dust mid-air. And those enforcers? They weren't just muscle anymore. They had tactics now. Whatever AI the Council used, it had started to mimic us. Each battle was harder, more calculated, less predictable. But they still didn't get the core problem. We didn't want to win. We just wanted them to die. Frankie said it best one night while we were camped out in the ruins of an old Walmart, eating half-burned canned beans and listening to distant screams echo through the parking lot. "They're trying to end this clean," he muttered, smoke curling from his cigarette. "But you can't clean up a wildfire." He was right. And soon, we'd set the biggest fire yet. It started with intel from a kid, just 16. We called him Ren. Skinny, twitchy, always looking over his shoulder. He used to run drugs before the invasion. Now he ran messages, scavenged power cores off downed drones, and somehow hacked into a council comm tower using a broken laptop and parts from a VCR. Ren found something big. Buried deep in the council's encrypted channels, their central command hub wasn't in orbit anymore. It had landed. Right here. Midwest U.S. heartland. They were trying to establish roots. Arrogant bastards. They thought Earth was ready for integration. Thought we were manageable now. They didn't realize the deeper they dug in, the more of us they'd stir up. The hub was disguised, naturally. Cloaked, armored, guarded like a king's tomb. But it was there. In the shell of what used to be a Tesla factory near Springfield, modern irony at its finest, alien conquerors hiding in a temple of failed human ambition. We knew it was suicide. Didn't matter. The mission was clear. Hit them where it hurt. Decapitate the head of their operation. Force them to either pull out or send their entire fleet down and scorch the Earth. And if they did that, they'd lose everything they came for. We prepped for 7 days. Recruited 2 more squads, Echo Burn and Echo V. Burn was led by an ex-firefighter turned Molotov maniac. V was ex-military, full of guys who got booted for being unfit for team command. Translation: too violent, too unpredictable. Perfect. Our team moved in at dusk. 15 of us, dressed in stolen armor, covered in mud, sweat, and blood that wasn't ours. The approach was slow. Every footstep felt like glass, every breath a warning. Then the air changed. The command hub. It wasn't just a building. It pulsed. The air shimmered around it like heat waves off asphalt. You could hear it too, a low hum just below hearing range that made your molars itch and your hands twitch involuntarily. Ren called it field resonance. Said it was some kind of low-frequency mind control to keep civilians docile. I called it what it was: violation. Even being near the damn thing felt like someone rooting around in your skull with cold fingers. We charged anyway. Echo 5 hit the west wall first, breached with plastic explosives and rebar. 2 went down instantly. Some kind of sonic defense turned their brains to soup. Echo Burn followed up with homemade napalm. It worked. Oh, it worked. You've never seen a 7-foot alien scream until you watch it try to pat out flames with 3-fingered hands. We breached through the eastern loading dock. I was first through. Inside, it was sterile. Not cold, but blank. No dirt, no color, just smooth gray walls that felt like they were grown, not built. There were no windows, no doors, just curved corridors and floating lights that tracked our movement. Then we hit the heart of it, the control core. It wasn't machinery, it was alive. A massive, breathing column of blue tissue and black cords pulsing like a lung full of static electricity. And standing in front of it, a council prime, bigger than the rest. Tall, unarmored, pale skin like marble veined with electric blue. He didn't speak. He just looked at us, like we were insects. Frankie didn't hesitate, emptied a full mag into him. Didn't even flinch. The prime raised one hand. Ren went flying across the room, hit a wall, and didn't get back up. Bones don't bend that way and survive. We opened fire, bullets, grenades, screams, blood, and that's when I realized the truth. They didn't invade to conquer. They invaded to replace us. Their tech wasn't integration, it was erasure. Genetic overwrite. They weren't just taking our land, they were trying to take our identity, our instincts, our defiance. They wanted Earth without humans. And I wasn't having it. Frankie took the charge off his back, our last hope. 50 pounds of old-school C4, wired by a guy who once built bombs in Afghanistan with chewing gum and wire. We didn't have time to argue. He shoved it into the base of the core and turned to me. "Get out," he said. I shook my head. "I said get out." That time I listened. I ran. Half the corridor caved as I sprinted through, and behind me, a sound louder than God himself screaming. Blue fire poured through the vents, followed by smoke and static. The Prime? Don't know if he died. Don't care. That building fell. And when the smoke cleared, there were no council signals in that region. No patrols, no drones. They retreated. One hub down. A dozen more to go. But now, the game had changed. We weren't survivors anymore. We were hunters. And every time one of us fell, 10 more picked up a weapon. The Council wasn't stunned anymore. They were scared. They came to pacify Earth. Instead, they woke it up. There's something different about silence after a win. It's heavier, not peaceful, not comforting. Like it's waiting, holding its breath. That's what it felt like after we leveled the command hub in Springfield. The air itself was tight. The woods around us were still. No birds, no bugs, no council patrols, just thick smoke, burning circuitry, and the buzzing in your ears that doesn't stop, even when the guns do. We lost 9 that day, half of Echo V, all of Echo Burn, Ren, and Frankie. I dug his grave myself. Didn't say anything over it, just buried him deep and patted the dirt flat. No prayers. Frankie never believed in much. Said once that heaven wasn't made for men like us anyway. After the Springfield strike, something changed. The Resistance started seeing more wins than losses, not because we got better, but because the Council started making mistakes. Big ones. They'd underestimated us from day one, and now they were overcorrecting. Instead of surgical strikes, they sent overwhelming force. Entire provinces were napalmed from orbit, turned to black fields and melted buildings. They deployed terraforming drones to rewrite ecosystems, thinking if they couldn't crush us militarily, they'd crush the land we needed to survive. But Earth ain't a clean slate. Terraforming tech doesn't mix well with Earth's chaos. Our oceans, our atmosphere, our microbes, they fought back. The drones failed. The land swallowed them up. And what didn't get swallowed was stolen by scavengers who learned to rig council engines into homemade EMP bombs. Humans adapted faster than their tech ever could. After Springfield, our radio frequencies lit up with calls from cells we'd never heard of. Echo Shield, Ghost Ridge, The Pit, Sons of Ash. Resistance groups rising out of the wreckage like weeds through concrete. I became a name. Not a leader. I didn't want that. But a name. Connor Maddox. The man who blew the Prime's heart out. People whispered it like it was legend, like I was some myth born in fire and gunpowder. I wasn't. I was tired. My hands shook when I stopped moving. I'd started talking to Frankie when no one was around. Like he was still there, sitting beside me, smoking that burnt filter crap he loved. I could still smell it sometimes, like ash and dirt and something almost human. We moved south, Mississippi River Corridor. Intel said the Council had set up a new relay site inside what used to be St. Louis. The arch was gone, blown apart during week 3 of the invasion. The city was a war zone. Not between us and them, but between them and the gangs that had taken over after the U.S. collapsed. See, not everyone wanted Earth back. Some saw opportunity in chaos. The Council started cutting deals. They gave weapons, power cells, clean water, in exchange for peace and territory. Human warlords became lapdogs, spying on resistance routes, turning over fighters, handing over children for genetic evaluation. We didn't fight those humans like we fought the aliens. We fought them worse. Our squad rolled into North St. Louis at night. 4 of us now. Jenkins, Sabo, Milt, and me. We wore black, kept low, and moved like death in a place already drowning in it. The warlord running that zone called himself Karn. Real name was probably Brad or Travis or something equally unimpressive. But Karn had teeth now. Council rifles, thermal drones, power armor customized with human skulls like trophies. He didn't expect us to walk into his compound and shoot his guards in their sleep. He didn't expect Jenkins to gut him in his own throne room and throw his severed head onto the camera feed they'd been using to monitor local resistance. And he sure as hell didn't expect us to raid the Council's gift vault afterward, stealing half their tech and setting the rest on fire. We left a message scrawled across the front of the compound in Karn's blood. We don't kneel. It wasn't just about the Council anymore. It was about the humans who betrayed their own to lick alien boots. It was about drawing a line in the dirt and saying, "You're either with us, or you're already dead." Word of the St. Louis purge spread like wildfire. Suddenly, no one wanted to deal with the Council anymore. The fear had flipped. Before, people cooperated to stay alive. Now they cooperated out of fear that we would come for them. And we would. Oh, we would. The Council started falling back. Not a retreat, not yet, but slower patrols, less aggressive sweeps. They started cloaking more frequently, as if hiding from a ghost. Then came the broadcast, a wideband transmission, not encrypted, not coded. Plain Earth languages, every one of them. The voice was human. A woman. Calm. Cold. "To the resistance, your acts of violence are noted. We do not fear you. You are statistically irrelevant. However, your persistence disrupts balance. Integration is no longer viable. You've made your choice. Prepare for cleansing." Cleansing. That was the word they used when they erased planets. Not conquered. Erased. We met in a crater that used to be a high school football field. Representatives from 7 resistance groups. Some military, some civilian, some just angry sons of bitches like me who knew how to shoot. We called it the Pact. Not an alliance, not a council, just an understanding. If they were going to wipe Earth clean, we'd make it cost so much they'd never do it again. The new plan wasn't to push them out. The plan was to climb aboard. The Council's fleet hovered in the exosphere, invisible to most, unreachable by anything Earth still had. But we'd been stealing tech, hacking their engines, learning their weaknesses. Ren hadn't died for nothing. His laptop was still with us, cracked, held together by duct tape and dried blood, but loaded with Council schematics he downloaded before his skull hit that wall. The plan was suicide. Get aboard one of their transport cruisers, hijack it, override the launch protocols, get to the fleet, and detonate a hydrogen payload we'd built using stolen fission cores from Springfield and enough dirty uranium to make the devil sweat. We called it Project Downfall. I volunteered to lead it. Jenkins didn't even argue. He just nodded and started checking his gear. Milt said nothing, but he carved a small cross into the metal of his rifle and kissed it. Sabo cried for the first time. Said he didn't want to die out there in space, forgotten. I told him none of us would be forgotten. That's not how humans work. We launched from an old spaceport in Nevada. Hidden beneath a mountain range, once decommissioned, now reborn as humanity's final knife in the gut of its oppressor. The ship we stole wasn't designed for human hands, but we made it fly. It groaned, bucked, threatened to tear apart at every kilometer, but it held. We broke through the clouds and saw the fleet, dozens of council ships, hanging there like gods, silver, silent, watching. We didn't hesitate. We activated the payload, not for glory, not for medals, for Frankie, for Ray, for Howie, for Ren, for the world that forgot us and the enemy that tried to erase us. And as the light exploded across the stars, as that cruiser ripped through their ranks like fire through dry grass, I smiled. Because even if we died, even if they erased the whole damn planet after that, they'd never forget the day Earth bit back. And they'd never invade again. Not this world, not this species, not these men. Space doesn't burn like Earth. There's no fire, no screaming winds, no blazing skies. Just silence. Just light. Terrible, blinding, pure white light that swallows everything. That's what we saw when the payload went off. I didn't expect to wake up. Didn't want to, if I'm honest. I'd made peace with it, or something close. That I'd die up there, surrounded by flames no one would ever see, becoming a story someone else would pass around campfires years later. But fate's a funny bastard. Because I did wake up. Barely. Alarms were blaring, red lights, smoke pouring from cracked consoles. I couldn't hear anything except the ringing in my skull and the pounding of my heart. I tasted blood. My own or someone else's. Didn't matter. Jenkins was slumped in his seat, half his face gone. Milt was sprawled on the floor with a shard of council alloy punched clean through his chest. Sabo. I don't even know what happened to Sabo. Maybe he vaporized in the blast. Or maybe part of him's still floating out there, orbiting a moon he'll never touch. I was the only one left. And the cruiser was dying. Systems failing. Hull integrity down to nothing. Fire suppression had kicked in, turning the cabin into a freezing tomb. I pulled myself up, choking on the cold and the silence. Half my ribs were broken. My leg was shattered from knee to ankle. But I crawled, because I wasn't done. Not yet. Through the cracked viewport, I saw it. The fleet in ruins. Half of their ships were just gone. Burning husks spiraling out of control. The other half were scattering, running. The blast didn't just hit them physically. It hit their pride, their illusion of control. It told them the truth. We're not prey. We're not savages. We're not theirs. We're the storm. And now they were scared of the weather. I found a manual ejection pod near the belly of the ship. No one ever used those things. They were primitive, and chances of survival were microscopic. But I had one thing the Council never counted on: spite. I launched. The pod punched out into the black, and everything after that was a blur, freezing, drifting, falling, breaking through Earth's atmosphere with no insulation, screaming into the sky like a meteor made of rage and desperation. I crashed in what used to be Iowa, or what was left of it, woke up in a crater, surrounded by ash and silence. And someone found me. Her name was Ray. Didn't say much at first, just dragged me out of the wreckage, patched me up, and dropped me into a shelter dug beneath the ruins of a high school gymnasium. The people there didn't cheer. They didn't cry. They just stared, like I was a ghost. And maybe I was. News of the blast had already spread. The Fleetbreaker, they called it. The fire from Earth. Some said I was dead, some said I was divine punishment, some said I never existed, and the ship blew itself up by accident. No one knew the truth. So when I showed up, half-burned, limping, stitched together with hope and morphine, they didn't know what to believe. But they followed me anyway. Not because I was a leader. I wasn't. Still ain't. But because I'd done what they never thought possible. I'd made the gods bleed. With the fleet shattered, Earth shifted. For the first time in years, the sky was empty. Council patrols slowed to a crawl. Their hold over major cities weakened. Human collaborators started turning on each other. Civilians started arming themselves. Small groups became armies. Resistance cells started wearing their own insignias, flying their own flags, setting up training camps in mountains, swamps, broken-down subway stations. What we had before was survival. What we had now was momentum. I watched it happen from the shadows. Didn't want parades, didn't want cameras. I kept moving, one leg still dragging, left arm numb most days. But I moved, helped train new recruits, taught them how the Council moved, how they thought, their weaknesses, their pride, their blind spots, how to fight like cornered animals with nothing to lose. And Earth became a planet they didn't recognize anymore. The ones who stayed behind, Council remnants, stranded field units, half-burnt cruisers that crash-landed in deserts or forests. They were hunted, relentlessly, night and day. Some we caught, some we made examples of, others we just burned. But it wasn't over. We knew better. The Council would regroup. Somewhere out in the galaxy, some smug alien bureaucrat was watching reports roll in, mouth twisting into a sneer, already preparing a second wave. A real one. Earth wasn't safe. Earth was the beginning. So we started reaching out. Old satellites got rebuilt. Underground science teams, the ones who'd gone dark when the invasion started, came crawling out of bunkers with reverse-engineered tech and madness in their eyes. We built comm towers. We sent signals into deep space, not begging for help, but daring someone else to try. And then we got a signal back, not from the Council, from someone else, someone watching. The message came through on every band, radio, digital, analog, even Morse. We saw your fire. We saw your defiance. We believed your species was extinct. We were wrong. Contact is open. We didn't know who it was. Didn't know if it was friend or foe. Didn't care. Because whoever was out there, they saw what we did to gods. And if they wanted war, we'd show them how Earth fights. The scar on my leg never healed. The burns on my neck still ache every time the air pressure shifts. But I'm alive. The last piece of the first wave. The spark in the wreckage. And every time I close my eyes, I see Frankie. Sitting beside me, smiling through blood-stained teeth, cigarette smoke curling in the air. "You believe him now?" he'd say. "Told you we weren't done." "No, Frankie, we're not done. We're just getting started. And this galaxy? It better remember our name, because the Council made one mistake they'll never recover from. They invaded Earth. And Earth invaded back. The first time I saw Earth from orbit again, it wasn't through a Council ship's viewport. It was through a cracked, half-assembled cockpit built out of stolen alien alloys, human muscle, and desperation. The stars beyond were endless. But the war wasn't. It had just moved. We'd spent 6 months rebuilding. No breaks, no sleep. The world was still in ruins, but now it moved with purpose. Resistance became organization. Tribes became nations. And beneath the mountains of the Rockies, inside what used to be NORAD, humanity started building its first fleet. We didn't have the science. We had rage. We didn't have space academies. We had veterans. We didn't have blueprints. We had wreckage. Thousands of downed Council drones, fried corvettes, crashed atmospheric skiffs, all picked apart by engineers who'd once built hot rods and meth labs. And somehow they made it fly. Not pretty, not graceful, but mean, sharp, ugly. Ours. The Council didn't know. They thought Earth was licking its wounds, thought we'd settle into rebuilding, planting crops, relearning how to walk. They didn't realize that every burned field, every collapsed building, every grave, it just fed us. They broke our planet. Now we were going to break their galaxy. I was on the first ship out. Not because I was the best pilot. Hell, I was barely passable. But because I'd survived Springfield, survived orbit, and the men and women building this new world needed a symbol. I didn't want to be a symbol. I wanted revenge. Our fleet had 12 ships. Only 3 could reach interstellar speed. The others were more like long-range guided missiles with pilots strapped in. One-way rides, all guts, no promises. They called our ship the Scar. Fitting, because that's what we were. Not healed, not whole, just angry and alive. The Scar was made from a Council courier vessel, gutted and rebuilt. We painted it matte black, covered it in slurs against the Council in every Earth language we could find. On the hull, in jagged white paint, we wrote, "We remember." Our first target wasn't a capital, wasn't a throne world, wasn't even strategic. It was a relay station, a floating data vault hanging over some dead moon in Council space. It controlled signal routes for half their border systems, Hit it, and we'd blind them, not just to us, but to their own communications. They'd be deaf and panicking. It was defended by 3 scout ships, 2 AI-controlled orbital defense rings, and a station garrison of about 70 council troops. Against that, we had 6 soldiers and a ship stitched together with duct tape and human spite. I was one of the 6. The rest were like me, ghosts of the old war. Some had been hiding in bunkers when the fleet fell. Some were pulled from ruined cities after being buried alive. One had no tongue left and communicated with chalk and a board strapped to his chest. We didn't need speeches, we just needed a breach point. We dropped into orbit in total silence. Stealth tech wasn't perfect. It crackled, shimmered, but it got us close enough to the outer ring before alarms kicked. Turrets lit up. One round clipped our left thruster. The ship groaned. We kept pushing. I watched the pilot, a girl no older than 20, probably used to be a mechanic, force that ship through a storm of plasma with a cigarette in her mouth and death in her eyes. We punched through, clipped the docking bay, slid sideways into a wall and tore half the hull off in the process. Then we were inside. Old satellites got rebuilt. Underground science teams, the ones who'd gone dark when the invasion started, came crawling out of bunkers with reverse-engineered tech and madness in their eyes. We built comm towers. We sent signals into deep space, not begging for help, but daring someone else to try. And then we got a signal back, not from the Council, from someone else, someone watching. The message came through on every band, radio, digital, analog, even Morse. We saw your fire. We saw your defiance. We believed your species was extinct. We were wrong. Contact is open. We didn't know who it was. Didn't know if it was friend or foe. Didn't care. Because whoever was out there, they saw what we did to gods. And if they wanted war, we'd show them how Earth fights. The scar on my leg never healed. The burns on my neck still ache every time the air pressure shifts. But I'm alive. The last piece of the first wave. The spark in the wreckage. And every time I close my eyes, I see Frankie. Sitting beside me, smiling through blood-stained teeth, cigarette smoke curling in the air. "You believe him now?" he'd say. "Told you we weren't done." "No, Frankie, we're not done. We're just getting started. And this galaxy? It better remember our name, because the Council made one mistake they'll never recover from. They invaded Earth. And Earth invaded back. The first time I saw Earth from orbit again, it wasn't through a Council ship's viewport. It was through a cracked, half-assembled cockpit built out of stolen alien alloys, human muscle, and desperation. The stars beyond were endless. But the war wasn't. It had just moved. We'd spent 6 months rebuilding. No breaks, no sleep. The world was still in ruins, but now it moved with purpose. Resistance became organization. Tribes became nations. And beneath the mountains of the Rockies, inside what used to be NORAD, humanity started building its first fleet. We didn't have the science. We had rage. We didn't have space academies. We had veterans. We didn't have blueprints. We had wreckage. Thousands of downed Council drones, fried corvettes, crashed atmospheric skiffs, all picked apart by engineers who'd once built hot rods and meth labs. And somehow they made it fly. Not pretty, not graceful, but mean, sharp, ugly. Ours. The Council didn't know. They thought Earth was licking its wounds, thought we'd settle into rebuilding, planting crops, relearning how to walk. They didn't realize that every burned field, every collapsed building, every grave, it just fed us. They broke our planet. Now we were going to break their galaxy. I was on the first ship out. Not because I was the best pilot. Hell, I was barely passable. But because I'd survived Springfield, survived orbit, and the men and women building this new world needed a symbol. I didn't want to be a symbol. I wanted revenge. Our fleet had 12 ships. Only 3 could reach interstellar speed. The others were more like long-range guided missiles with pilots strapped in. One-way rides, all guts, no promises. They called our ship the Scar. Fitting, because that's what we were. Not healed, not whole, just angry and alive. The Scar was made from a Council courier vessel, gutted and rebuilt. We painted it matte black, covered it in slurs against the Council in every Earth language we could find. On the hull, in jagged white paint, we wrote, "We remember." Our first target wasn't a capital, wasn't a throne world, wasn't even strategic. It was a relay station, a floating data vault hanging over some dead moon in Council space. It controlled signal routes for half their border systems. Hit it, and we'd blind them, not just to us, but to their own communications. They'd be deaf and panicking. It was defended by 3 scout ships, 2 AI-controlled orbital defense rings, and a station garrison of about 70 Council troops. Against that, we had 6 soldiers and a ship stitched together with duct tape and human spite. I was one of the 6. The rest were like me, ghosts of the old war. Some had been hiding in bunkers when the fleet fell. Some were pulled from ruined cities after being buried alive. One had no tongue left and communicated with chalk and a board strapped to his chest. We didn't need speeches, we just needed a breach point. We dropped into orbit in total silence. Stealth tech wasn't perfect. It crackled, shimmered, but it got us close enough to the outer ring before alarms kicked. Turrets lit up. One round clipped our left thruster. The ship groaned. We kept pushing. I watched the pilot, a girl no older than 20, probably used to be a mechanic, force that ship through a storm of plasma with a cigarette in her mouth and death in her eyes. We punched through, clipped the docking bay, slid sideways into a wall and tore half the hull off in the process. Then we were inside. Our target was Draxion 4, an industrial world 3 jumps into Council territory. No native population, just Council workers, drones, and factories pumping out war components. Ammo, armor, genetic stims for their soldiers, basically the spine of their war machine. Take it out, and they'd bleed from the waist down. I led the strike team, didn't want to, didn't ask to, but nobody else would carry the detonator. It was quiet on the way in. Too quiet. I've learned to hate quiet. Behind me sat 15 men and 2 women. None of them wore standard uniforms. Some were in patchwork gear, others in old riot armor, even one in a torn-up firefighter's suit from Chicago. But they all had that look, that hollow-eyed stare that said, "I already died once, and came back just to watch you burn." We breached orbit just past 0400 Earth time. The Council's satellites picked us up instantly, but by then it was already too late. We'd launched decoy fleets, half-empty ships wired with thermonuclear cores and fake heat signatures. They drew the planetary defense fire like flies to rotting meat. By the time the Scar 2 dropped low enough, we were already ejecting. I hit the ground hard, burnt my shoulder on the slide, broke 2 fingers bracing the fall. Didn't matter. We moved. Through black rock valleys, over heat-rippled dunes, toward the pulsing factory lights that glowed like open wounds in the planet's surface. Draxion 4 wasn't just ugly, it was wrong. The air tasted like copper and rot. Machines crawled across the ground on 6 legs, spewing waste into boiling rivers. The Council had ruined this world, strip-mined it into a carcass with lights. And now we were going to make it scream. We breached the compound perimeter using Council door codes we stole from the relay station before we blew it. First target was the core reactor room. We didn't take out guards. We drew them in. Noise, lights, gunfire in bursts. The Council trained for efficiency, not chaos. They didn't know how to handle the kind of disorder we brought. They came at us in formation. We answered with fire and laughter. I remember Leto, big guy from Baton Rouge, lost his whole family on day 1, cackling like a maniac while dragging a flamethrower down a hall, cooking every alien in sight. "How's this for compliance, you blue-blooded pissants?" he roared. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't clean. It wasn't civilized. It was effective. We reached the reactor room 20 minutes in. Overwatch said Council reinforcements were 6 minutes away. That's all we needed. We planted the charges, synced the triggers to our evac signal, and started backtracking. And that's when we saw it. A breeding vault. We weren't supposed to touch those. Command said our job was industrial disruption, not biological warfare. The idea was, we weren't monsters. We hit infrastructure, not life. But when we looked inside, we saw something that changed everything. Humans. Not soldiers, not volunteers. Clones. Tens of thousands. Floating in tanks, plugged into machines, half-grown, hairless, twitching, their eyes open, their mouths sealed shut. Some had organs exposed, some were fused together, some were just heads in jars wired to blinking lights. They were building us, modifying us, studying what made us fight, and trying to rip it out. "Burn it," I said. Command said, I said burn it. No more debates, no more moral high ground. These bastards didn't just want to erase humanity. They wanted to replace us with something quieter, something obedient, something that wouldn't fight back next time. So we burned it all. The tanks, the notes, the AI running it, the whole wing of the facility. By the time the reinforcements arrived, the compound was a tomb. We exfilled in low-atmo gliders made from drone chassis. 10 of us made it out. The rest stayed behind, either by force or by choice. They knew the rules. Victory or vengeance. Both would be remembered. Back on Earth, things changed fast. The footage from the vault hit every screen, every wall, every underground tunnel and city still breathing. Civilians stopped calling it a war. They called it what it really was. A purge. And now Earth knew. We weren't just fighting for freedom. We were fighting for the right to exist as ourselves, unedited, unreplicated, unbroken. Recruitment tripled overnight. The next wave of ships weren't patched-up council crafts. They were ours. Sleek, mean, full of edges and fury, carrying names like Reckoner, Judgment Day, Liberty's Teeth. And at the heart of it all was Earth's new motto. They came to tame us. Now we're here to teach them fear. The Council didn't respond for days, not publicly, but our hackers intercepted something. A message between high-level Council officials. One line stood out. We thought humanity would dissolve under pressure. Instead, they crystallized into the sharpest edge we've ever seen. Damn right we did. And we hadn't even drawn real blood yet. We were given a choice for the next target, a communications citadel on the edge of the Orion flow, or the Council's research moon on Galzen's Eye, where, allegedly, they kept war prisoners in deep cryo while experimenting with psionic inhibitors. I chose Galzen because I wanted to look those bastards in the face while we cut the power and set our people free. I wanted them to know Earth wasn't done with them yet. Galzen's Eye wasn't a planet. It was a rock. Barren. Cold. Hanging in a silent corner of space like a scar the universe forgot to heal. No atmosphere. No sun. Just a permanent twilight under the watchful shadow of a nearby gas giant, with council towers stabbing up from its crust like needles. A prison. A research facility. A graveyard for everything they couldn't control. We were never supposed to see it. But they made the mistake of leaving one of their harvesters intact on Draxion 4. We cracked its navigation core. Pulled the coordinates. Galzen's Eye lit up like a blinking red wound. We knew what it was the second we saw the footage. Human shapes. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Suspended in cryopods. Naked. Wired to machines. Limbs missing. Scar tissue layered over tech ports. Some still alive. Some probably not. Council research logs listed the project as Siphon Initiative. They weren't just studying us. They were draining us, every emotion, every instinct, trying to harvest what made us human and bottle it into something they could use. Courage, defiance, rage, the very things they mocked and feared, and they were farming it, stealing it, like it was a resource. I didn't need permission, didn't wait for strategy meetings or high command. I just said 2 words into the comms and watched every screen go dark in unison. We go. We launched with a single fleet, 6 strike cruisers, 22 stealth dropships, 2 nukes, and 1 coffin, wrapped in steel, rigged with every explosive we had left in the stockpile. They knew we were coming. Didn't care. Council arrogance runs deep. Even after everything we'd done, they still thought they could outplan us. But we weren't coming with tactics. We were coming with wrath. Gehelzen's atmosphere burned red as we breached entry. Dropships sliced through orbit like black blades. Turrets opened fire. Council defense rings lit up the sky, launching kinetic shells at us with the precision only AI can manage. Still, we made landfall, 4 dropships down, 35 men lost in the first 3 minutes. The rest of us hit the rock running. Council guards came fast, faster than any deployment we'd ever faced. These weren't scouts. These were enforcers, elite breeds, taller, stronger, covered head to toe in reactive armor that shimmered like oil under starlight. But they'd never fought us before. Not here. Not now. Not after everything. I led the push through their primary facility, a long corridor shaped like a spine, each segment leading to another containment wing. They'd numbered the wings. Wing 1, failed Terran subjects. Wing 2, emotional collapse. Wing 3, hybrid testing. Wing 4, long-term conversion candidates. Each door we passed made my fists clench tighter around my rifle. Each scream from inside those walls lit something up in my chest that hadn't been alive since I watched Frankie go up in flames back at Springfield. We reached Wing 5 before we saw the first one. A survivor, eyes wide, skin pale, no hair, tubes still stitched into the back of his neck. He looked at us, blinked, then dropped to his knees. No cry for help, no question, just raw, trembling disbelief. I crouched down. He reached up and touched my cheek. "You're real?" I nodded, lifted him, handed him a rifle. "You are too." We started opening every wing after that. Dozens of captives, then hundreds. Some could walk, some couldn't. We gave the weak cover. We gave the strong weapons. And in 30 minutes, the prisoner population became an army. Most of them were half-starved, covered in bruises and scars. But they didn't hesitate. You don't hesitate when your entire life's been pain, and now you've got a rifle in your hands and a clear target. We moved like a wave through the remaining sectors, clearing rooms, torching labs, shredding data cores with axes and fire. No more stealing our DNA. No more measuring our pain. No more siphoning our will. We weren't experiments anymore. We were the reckoning. Then came the final room, the central chamber, a cathedral built of black glass and humming circuits, monitors hanging from the walls, surveillance feeds of Earth, other worlds, other prisoners, dozens of them. And in the center? The council director. He wasn't armored, didn't need to be. He was surrounded by tech, and behind him a single command terminal glowing with pulsing red energy. It took us 2 seconds to figure it out. That was the fail-safe, the purge switch. One push, and every remaining prison across council space, every human in cryo, every hybrid in testing, every cell being poked and prodded, would be erased. He smiled. You've never seen an alien smile. It's like watching a wolf grin with your blood still on its teeth. "You'll win nothing," he said, voice filtered through a translator. "Victory is meaningless if your species is reduced to animals." I stepped forward, rifle raised. "We already were animals. And I pulled the trigger. We didn't just kill him. We didn't just blow the terminal. We loaded the facility with every explosive charge we had left and set it to blow from the core out. We exfilled with the surviving prisoners, now soldiers, crammed into every inch of dropship space. As we pulled away from the rock, we watched the facility collapse inward, then detonate, silent, beautiful, final. The Council didn't respond. There was no retaliation, no broadcast, no fleet, just silence. Because they knew. We hadn't just attacked. We hadn't just won. We'd sent a message. You don't get to invade Earth and walk away. You don't get to erase us without consequences. You don't get to rewrite what it means to be human. We made them look into the mirror and see their failure. And Earth, for all its scars, its broken bones, its bloodied hands, stood tall, not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as the last monster you ever want to wake up. Now, the war is over. Not officially. There's no treaty, no council delegates waving flags, no presidents giving speeches, just space, open and ours. We've started building, not cities, not monuments, outposts, ships, factories, because we know how this works now. Peace is a luxury. Peace is the gap between wars, the breath you take before the next punch comes. We're not waiting anymore. We're not reacting. We're preparing. And me? I still walk with a limp. My lungs still ache. My hands still tremble some nights when I remember Frankie, or Ray, or Ren, or the thousands of names we lost along the way. But I keep going, because I saw the end. And I helped pull the trigger. Earth was the test. Humanity was the mistake they never learned from. And the stars? They're watching now. They've seen what happens when you corner a species built from grief, sharpened by suffering, and driven by nothing but spite. Let them come. Let them try. Let them all remember. The Council invaded Earth, and Earth invaded back.